The alarm screamed through every corridor of the colony ship. Red emergency lights painted the walls in blood-colored shadows. Captain Do-hyun Park gripped the command chair as another explosion rocked the vessel. Sparks flew from a console to his left. The smell of burning metal filled the air. Life support at 30%. Engineer Minji Kang called out from her station. Her voice stayed steady, but her hands shook as they moved across the controls. We're losing it faster now. Maybe 6 hours left, maybe less. Do-hyun closed his eyes for a moment. Behind his eyelids, he saw the faces of everyone aboard. 4,127 people, men, women, children, all counting on him, all dying slowly in the cold darkness of space. The ship shuddered again. More alarms joined the chorus. Engine core is completely dead, Minji said. Her voice cracked this time. I can't fix it. We don't have the parts. We don't have anything. Young Junho Lee sat at the communications station. He was barely 23 years old. This was his first deep space mission. He stared at his screen with wide eyes. Still no response to our distress signals. We're too far from any mapped routes. Nobody's coming. Ambassador Tae-hyun Choi stood near the back of the bridge. He was supposed to represent humanity at their new colony world. Now he would die before ever seeing it. He looked at the captain and said nothing. There was nothing to say. Do-hyun pulled up the star map. Empty space in every direction. They had taken a shortcut through an uncharted region. It was supposed to save them 3 months of travel time. Instead, it had killed them. Some kind of spatial anomaly had torn through their engines. Now they drifted, powerless and invisible to the rest of the galaxy. Captain, Junho said suddenly. His voice rose with something that might have been hope. I'm picking up something, ships, multiple ships. They're not human. Everyone on the bridge went still. Are they responding to our distress call? Do-hyun asked. Junho shook his head. I don't think they even heard it. They're passing through the area. Pure chance, Do-hyun felt his heart pound. This could be salvation, or it could be something worse than slow death. Humanity was still new to the galaxy. They had met a few alien species. Some were friendly. Some were not. Some saw humans as little more than animals. Hail them, Do-hyun ordered. All frequencies. Tell them we're dying. Tell them we need help. Junho's fingers flew across his controls. Sending now. The minutes crawled by. Each second felt like an hour. The life support systems groaned. The temperature on the ship dropped another degree. People were gathering in the central areas now, trying to stay warm, trying to stay together. If these were their last hours, at least they would not die alone. Captain, Junho's voice broke the silence. They're responding. Translating now. A voice came through the speakers. It sounded like clicking and humming, but the computer turned it into words they could understand. Human vessel, this is Hive Leader Tixvara of the Velrothi Patrol Fleet. We have received your distress call. What is your situation? Do-hyun leaned forward. This is Captain Do-hyun Park. Our engines are destroyed. Life support is failing. We have over 4,000 people aboard, including 800 children. We're dead in space, a long pause. Then another voice joined the conversation. This one sounded different, colder. Hive Leader, our supplies are limited. We are already running behind schedule. The Council will not approve this delay. Tixvara's voice replied, firm and clear. I am aware of our limitations, but these are thinking beings. They have young. We cannot leave them to die. The Council, the other voice began. The Council is not here, Tixvara said. I am, and I say we help them. Do-hyun felt something tight in his chest loosen just a little, just enough to breathe. Human vessel, Tixvara said. We are sending repair drones and emergency supplies. Our engineers will assess your damage. Hold on a little longer. The next 3 hours blurred together. Do-hyun watched through the viewports as strange ships approached. They looked like massive insects, all angles and segments covered in a dark green shell. Smaller craft detached from them carrying cargo and equipment. Minji worked with the Velrothi engineers through translated communications. They sent over repair nanites, tiny machines that could rebuild damaged systems. They sent atmosphere processors to restore the life support. They sent power cells to restart the main computers. Slowly, impossibly, the ship came back to life. The alarms stopped. The lights turned from red to white. Warm air began to flow through the vents. Children stopped crying. People stopped preparing to die. Do-hyun stood in the cargo bay as Velrothi workers loaded supplies onto his ship. He had never seen their species before. They stood on 6 legs with 4 arms that moved independently. Their eyes were compound, reflecting light in rainbow patterns. They looked frightening, but they moved with gentleness as they stacked crates of food and medicine. Ambassador Tae-hyun approached Tixvara, who had come aboard to oversee the operation. "We must repay you," Tae-hyun said. "We have trade goods, technology, anything you need. Name your price." Tixvara's translator rendered their response. "You have nothing we need. Your species is young, still growing. You have no resources to spare. Then let us offer an alliance," Tae-hyun pressed. "A treaty. Future cooperation." "We ask for nothing," Tixvara said simply. "You are dying. We could help." "That is enough reason." Do-hyun stepped forward. "At least let us record this debt. Let us remember what you've done." Tixvara's head tilted in a way that might have been curiosity. "If it pleases you to remember, then remember. But we expect nothing in return." The Velrathi fleet prepared to depart. Minji confirmed that the engines would hold long enough to reach the nearest human outpost. They would survive. All of them. Do-hyun went to the ship's main computer and opened the permanent log. This was the record that could never be erased, never edited. It would survive as long as humanity survived. He typed carefully. Stardate 2847-317. The Velrathi saved us. Hive leader Tixvara and their fleet rescued 4,127 human lives when they had no reason to do so. They asked for nothing. They expected nothing. We will never forget this debt. We will never forget their kindness. This is recorded forever. He marked the entry with the highest priority level. Then he sent copies to every major human colony to Earth, to the military command. This was not just his memory anymore. It was humanity's memory. On the bridge, Junho watched the Velrathi ships disappear into faster-than-light travel. "Do you think they know?" he asked quietly. "Do they know how much this meant to us?" Do-hyun put a hand on the young man's shoulder. "Probably not. They seemed to think it was just another day's work." "But it wasn't," Junho said. "They saved us. They saved everyone." "I know," Do-hyun said. "And one day we'll find a way to thank them properly. Maybe not today. Maybe not for a long time. But humans don't forget. We remember who helped us. We always remember." The ship limped toward safety, carrying its precious cargo of lives. In the computer's core, the record burned bright. A debt recorded. A favor marked. A promise made without words, humanity remembered. Admiral Hee Jin-song walked through the memorial hall on Earth. Her boots clicked against the polished floor. Above her, the ceiling stretched up into darkness, but the walls glowed with names. Thousands upon thousands of names. This was the ledger. Every species that had ever helped humanity was written here in gold. Every species that had harmed humanity was written in red. The rules were simple and absolute. Help humanity and you would never be forgotten. Hurt humanity and you would never be forgiven. She stopped in front of the largest golden inscription. The Velrathi. The entry took up an entire wall. It listed every person aboard the Namsan's Hope, all 4,127 names. At the top, in letters that seemed to glow brighter than the rest, was one line. They saved us when we had nothing to give them. Hyejin's grandmother had been on that ship. A small child, only 5 years old, crying in her mother's arms as the air grew cold and thin. Her grandmother told the story every year on the anniversary. She was 63 now, and still her voice shook when she spoke of the moment the Velrathi arrived. "Admiral Song," a voice interrupted her thoughts. She turned to see Dr. Sungjae Lim, one of the best xenohistorians in human space. He carried a datapad and looked worried. "Doctor," she acknowledged, "you said you had urgent information?" Sungjae gestured to a private room off the main hall. They entered, and he locked the door behind them. His hands shook slightly as he activated his datapad. "I've been tracking the Velrathi for years," he said. "Cultural research, historical patterns, that sort of thing. But recently I've noticed something alarming." He pulled up a star map. The Velrathi territory was marked in green. It had shrunk considerably from its size in the old records. 20 years ago, they controlled 14 star systems, Sungjae explained. Now they control only 8. They're being pushed back by the Crothian Empire. Hyejin studied the map. She knew about the Crothians, a brutal species that believed in conquest and domination. They were strong, organized, and cruel. "How bad is it?" "Bad," Sungjae said quietly. "I've been analyzing refugee movements. Velrathi civilians are fleeing their outer colonies. The Crothians aren't just taking territory, they're enslaving populations. destroying anything they can't use. He pulled up another screen. Intelligence reports gathered from various sources. Merchant ships, spy satellites, intercepted communications. The Crothians are planning something big. I think they're going to attack the Velrathi homeworld. Hyejin felt her blood run cold. When? 6 months. Maybe less. She looked back at the datapad, then at Seungjae. Have the Velrathi asked for help? No, he said. They're too proud. Or maybe they don't think anyone would come. They've been isolated for decades. They have no major allies. Hyejin stood silent for a long moment. In her mind, she saw her grandmother's face. She heard the story again. The moment when hope arrived in the form of insect-like aliens who asked for nothing in return. Gather everything you have, she said. Every piece of intelligence. I need to take this to General Daehyun. 2 days later, Hyejin stood in the military command center. General Daehyun Ryu sat behind his desk reviewing the same information. Around the room, other high-ranking officers watched the presentation. Maps, charts, projections. The Crothian fleet is massive, one admiral said. If we intervene, we're talking about a major war. The Velrathi aren't our allies, another added. We have no treaty with them. No formal relationship at all. They saved us, Hyejin said. Her voice cut through the discussion like a blade. 120 years ago, they saved 4,000 of our people. They asked for nothing. They expected nothing. And now they're dying. General Daehyun looked up at her. He was old, his hair completely white, but his eyes were sharp. You're suggesting we mobilize our fleet to repay a debt from over a century ago? Yes, sir. A debt they probably don't even remember? Yes, sir. The general leaned back in his chair. What does the ledger say? Everyone in the room knew what that meant. The ledger was more than just a memorial. It was policy. It was law. It was the foundation of human foreign relations. The Velrathi are written in gold, Hyejin said. At the very top. They were the first species to show us mercy when we needed it most. Daehyun nodded slowly. He stood up and walked to the window. Outside, Earth glowed blue and white. Home to 15 billion people. The heart of human civilization. They had come so far in just over a century. How many ships do we have available? He asked. 400 warships, an officer replied. If we pull from every fleet. Pull them, Daehyun said. All of them. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Sir, one admiral protested, that will leave our own borders vulnerable. Then we'll be vulnerable, Daehyun said. He turned to face them all. Humanity pays its debts. That's not just words on a wall. That's who we are. The Velrathi saved us and now we save them. That's the deal. He looked at Hyejin. You'll command the fleet, Admiral. Get them ready. We leave in 1 month. The next 30 days were chaos. Ships from across human space converged on the staging point. Carriers, battleships, destroyers, support vessels. 400 ships crewed by 60,000 people. It was the largest military deployment in human history. Merchant Captain Jiwon Nam arrived at the command ship to brief Hyejin on the territory they would be crossing. She had traded with both the Velrathi and species near their space. They're not going to understand why you're coming, Jiwon warned. The Velrathi keep to themselves. They don't ask for help. They don't expect it. Then we'll surprise them, Hyejin said. She studied the routes, the jump points, the timing. Everything had to be perfect. If they arrived too early, they might start a diplomatic incident. Too late and the Velrathi would be gone. On the day of departure, Hyejin addressed the entire fleet over the communication network. 60,000 faces watched her from screens across 400 ships. Some of you are too young to remember the story of Namsun's hope, she began. But all of you know it. You learned it in school. You heard it from your parents and grandparents. The day the Velrathi saved us. She paused, letting the words sink in. They didn't know us. They had no reason to help. But they did it anyway because it was right. Now they're in danger and they're too proud to ask for help, so we're not going to wait for them to ask. We're going to show them what humanity does for its friends. She looked directly into the camera. We remember every favor. We remember every kindness. And we pay our debts. All of them. No matter how long it takes. The fleet jumped into faster-than-light travel. 400 ships moving as one, carrying the weight of a century-old promise. Back on Earth, people gathered at the ledger. They stood in front of the golden inscription, reading the names of those who had been saved. Some cried, some prayed, all of them hoped. In the government chambers, the vote had been unanimous. Not a single voice of opposition. The treasury was opened wide. Every resource humanity could spare was allocated to the mission, because that was the rule. The unbreakable law that had guided humanity for over a century. Help us, and we will move planets to help you in return. The message spread across the galaxy through merchant ships and diplomatic channels. Humanity was mobilizing. Humanity was going to war. Not for territory, not for resources, for a debt. Other species watched with confusion, some with fear. The humans were proving themselves to be strange creatures, creatures who remembered, creatures who kept their promises. The Crothian Empire heard the news and laughed. What did they care if humans wanted to die alongside the Velrathi? It would make the conquest even easier. But deep in human space, in the halls of military command, General Daehyun looked at the strategic maps and smiled. The Crothians thought they knew humanity. They were about to learn that they knew nothing at all. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Velrathi space. 400 warships materialized in the darkness, their running lights blazing like a constellation of new stars. Admiral Heejin Song stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the sensor displays. Somewhere ahead was the Velrathi border patrol. They would arrive soon, and they would not be happy. All ships report ready, Admiral, her tactical officer said. Weapons are powered down as ordered. Shields at minimum. Good, Heejin said. We're not here to fight them. We're here to save them. Captain Young Min Han commanded the Dreadnought Indomitable, the largest warship in the fleet. He stood at his command station reviewing the battle plans. They had practiced this 100 times. But practice and reality were very different things. Captain, his sensor officer called out. Multiple contacts. 20 Velrathi warships approaching fast. They're charging weapons. Youngman felt his pulse quicken. Hold position. Don't make any aggressive moves. Across the fleet, the same scene played out. Human ships waited, passive but ready. If this went wrong, if the Velrathi saw them as invaders, everything would fall apart before it even began. On the flagship, Ambassador Min-ho Kwon stepped onto the bridge. He was the voice of diplomacy, chosen specifically because his grandfather had been on Namzan's Hope. He understood the debt personally. They're hailing us, the communications officer reported. Audio and video. Put it through, Heejin ordered. The main screen lit up with the image of a Velrathi commander. Their compound eyes reflected the light in multiple colors. Their mandibles clicked together as they spoke. The translator rendered it into human language. Human fleet, you have violated Velrathi territory. This is an act of war. Power down your weapons and explain your presence immediately. Minho stepped forward. I am Ambassador Min-ho Kwon, representing the United Human Government. We come not as enemies but as friends. We know about the Crothian threat to your homeworld. The Velrathi commander's head tilted. That is not your concern. Leave our space immediately or we will open fire. We cannot do that, Minho said calmly. 120 years ago, your people saved us. A ship called Namsan's Hope was dying in deep space. Hive leader Tixvera found them and gave aid, asking nothing in return. We have come to return that favor. There was a long pause. The Velrathi commander looked confused. I know nothing of this event, the commander said. It was over a century ago. It has no relevance now. It has every relevance, Heejin spoke up, her voice firm. We are humanity. We remember every kindness shown to us. Your people saved 4,000 of ours, and now we will save you from the Crothians. More Velrathi ships were arriving. The human fleet was now surrounded by 50 enemy vessels. The tension was thick enough to cut. We do not need your help, the Velrathi commander said. But there was something in their voice. Uncertainty. Maybe even fear. With respect, Commander, Minho said. You do. The Crothians are coming with 800 warships. You have less than 200. You cannot win this fight alone, but together we have a chance. The screen went dark as the Velrathi cut the communication. The human fleet waited in tense silence. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Admiral, the sensor officer said suddenly. We're receiving a new transmission. It's coming from the Velrathi homeworld. Priority 1. Put it through, Heejin ordered. An elderly Velrathi appeared on screen. Their exoskeleton was faded with age, their movements slow, but their eyes were bright and alert. I am Tixvara, the old one said. I led the fleet that found your ship so long ago. I never thought I would hear that name again. Heejin felt her breath catch. This was the one, the Velrathi who had made the choice to save them. Hive leader Tixvara, Hijin said, bowing her head with respect. Your kindness changed the course of human history. We would not be here today without you. Tixvara's mandibles moved in a way that might have been sadness. I did what any decent being would do. You were dying. We had the ability to help. It was simple. It was everything, Hijin said. And now we do the same for you. You're in danger. We have the ability to help. It is simple. The old Velrathi made a sound like wind through leaves. A sigh, perhaps. You bring 400 warships across the galaxy for a debt we do not even remember. Your species is strange, Admiral. We prefer to think of it as loyal, Hijin replied. Tixvara looked at something off-screen, then back at the camera. My people's military commanders say you should leave. They say we can handle this ourselves, but I am old. And I remember what it was like to make hard choices. I remember your ancestors' faces when we pulled them from death. If you truly mean to help us, then I welcome you. The screen changed to show the Velrathi commander from before. They looked frustrated but resigned. The council has overruled me. You may enter our space. But know this, humans. If you betray us, we will make sure your entire species remembers the cost. We would expect nothing less, Hijin said. The Velrathi ships powered down their weapons. The human fleet moved forward. Two species, separated by a century and a half the galaxy, now united against a common enemy. Over the next 2 months, the combined fleets prepared for war. Colonel Suyung Bei led her special forces units to the Velrathi homeworld to train with their ground troops. The differences between the species were vast, but both sides adapted quickly. Tactical Officer Yunji Park, granddaughter of the original Captain Do-hyun Park, worked with Velrathi strategists to plan the defense. She spread out star maps on a holographic table, pointing out positions and weak points. The Crothians will expect you to defend your homeworld directly, she explained. They'll come in force trying to overwhelm you with numbers. A Velrathi general nodded. That is their way. They believe overwhelming force wins all battles. Then we don't fight the battle they expect, Yunji said. She highlighted the asteroid belt surrounding the Velrathi homeworld. We turn this into a trap. We make them think they're winning and then we close the jaws. Captain Youngman worked with Velrathi engineers on weapon integration. The two species had different technologies, different strengths. The key was finding ways to complement each other. Your ships are faster, he observed, more maneuverable, but our weapons hit harder at long range. And your shields are stronger, a Velrathi engineer added. But our hulls regenerate slowly over time. So we fight in mixed groups, Youngman suggested. Your speed, our firepower. Together we're better than either of us alone. Intelligence reports came in daily. The Crothian fleet was gathering. 800 warships, just as predicted. They were supremely confident. They had never lost a major battle. Ambassador Minho sent messages to other species in the region. The Crothians were a threat to everyone. Perhaps others would join the fight. But the responses were all the same. Too dangerous, too risky. Better to stay neutral and hope the Crothians were satisfied with Velrathi territory. We're alone, Minho reported to Hijin. Just us and the Velrathi. We've faced worse odds, Hijin said. Though privately, she wasn't sure that was true. Tixvara visited the human flagship one final time before the battle. The old Velrathi walked slowly through the corridors, looking at everything with curious eyes. Your ship smelled different than ours, Tixvara observed. Metal and something else, life. We bring a bit of home with us wherever we go, Hijin said. She led Tixvara to the observation deck. Outside, both fleets were visible. Human ships in tight formations, Velrathi vessels dancing between them like schools of fish. Tell me truly, Admiral, Tixvara said. Why do you do this? You could have sent a small force, a token gesture. Instead, you bring everything. You risk your entire military for us. Hijin looked out at the fleet. So many ships, so many lives, all here because of a promise made before most of them were born. We're not doing this just for you, she said quietly. We're doing it for ourselves, too. We're proving something. To the galaxy, yes, but also to ourselves. We're proving that gratitude matters, that loyalty matters, that memory matters. She turned to face the old Velrathi. You saved us once. You taught us that mercy has value. Now we teach the galaxy that humanity keeps its word. We remember our friends, and we protect them. Tixvara was silent for a long moment. Then their mandibles moved in what Hijin had learned was their version of a smile. I am glad we found your ship that day, Tixvara said, even if it leads to this battle. The galaxy needs species like yours. The alert sounded, sharp and urgent. The sensor officer's voice came through the comm system. Admiral, we have multiple contacts at the system's edge. It's them. The Crothians are here. Hyejin looked out at the stars one last time. Then she turned and walked toward the bridge. All ships to battle stations, she ordered. It's time to pay our debt. War Master Drakthos stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the Velrathi homeworld grow larger on the view screen. Behind him, 800 Crothian warships moved in perfect formation, the largest war fleet the Crothian Empire had ever assembled. The prey planet looks beautiful, Drakthos said, his translator turning his guttural speech into something other species could understand. Soon it will be ours, his second officer approached. War Master, we detected the Velrathi fleet earlier, but they have withdrawn. They appear to have fled behind the planet's moon. Drakthos laughed, a harsh barking sound. Of course they fled. They know they cannot win. This will be easier than we thought. The Crothian ships pushed deeper into the system, past the outer planets, past the gas giants, toward the inner system where the Velrathi homeworld waited. The asteroid belt lay ahead, a ring of rocks orbiting the sun. Sensors detect minimal activity in the belt, the officer reported. Some automated mining stations. Nothing military. Maintain course, Drakthos ordered. We'll crush anything in our path. The fleet entered the asteroid belt. Rock fragments drifted past the ships, some as small as pebbles, others as large as buildings. The Crothians had passed through dozens of such belts before. They were no obstacle. Aboard the human flagship, Admiral Hyejin watched the Crothian fleet advance. They were coming exactly as predicted. Overconfident, focused only on the planet ahead. They saw the belt as empty space. They didn't see the hidden human ships powered down to minimal levels hiding among the asteroids. They didn't see the Velrathi vessels tucked into the shadows behind the moon. They didn't see the weapons that had been placed on carefully selected rocks. They're in the kill zone, Tactical Officer Yunji reported. Her voice was steady, but her hands gripped her console tightly. 800 ships, all within the belt. Hyejin took a slow breath. This was the moment. Everything depended on the next few minutes. All ships, she said clearly, execute protocol Retribution. Across the asteroid belt, 400 human warships powered up simultaneously. Their running lights blazed to life. Their weapons charged. Their shields snapped into place. The Crothian fleet suddenly found themselves surrounded. Drakthos stared at his sensor display in shock. Where had they come from? How had they hidden so many ships? War Master, his officer shouted. They're humans. 400 human warships. Impossible, Drakthos snarled. Humanity has no interest in this sector. What are they doing here? His communication system crackled to life. Admiral Hyejin's face appeared on his screen. War Master Drakthos, she said calmly, you are about to learn an important lesson about humanity. We remember our debts? All of them, Drakthos sneered. You are outnumbered 2-1, human. You cannot win this fight. Surrender now and we will let your fleet leave. I wasn't asking for terms, Hyejin said. I was giving you a chance to surrender. You won't take it, I know. Your species doesn't believe in retreat. So let me show you what happens when you threaten humanity's friends. She cut the transmission and turned to Colonel Suyong Bei, who waited at the tactical station. Colonel, Hyejin said, show them. Suyong smiled coldly and pressed a series of commands. Throughout the asteroid belt, the rocks themselves came alive. Humanity had spent 2 months preparing. They had placed engines on selected asteroids, guidance systems, targeting computers. They had turned hundreds of massive rocks into weapons, each one loaded with kinetic energy from years of orbiting the sun. Now those asteroids began to move. The Crothian fleet watched in growing horror as rocks the size of city blocks accelerated toward them. No explosives, no fancy weapons, just mass and velocity, physics at its most brutal, evasive action. Drakthos screamed, but there was nowhere to go. The human fleet blocked one side. The asteroids came from all directions. The Crothians were trapped in a sphere of death. The first impacts were catastrophic. Asteroids moving at impossible speed slammed into Crothian ships. Shields meant to stop energy weapons were useless against solid matter traveling at orbital velocity. Hulls crumpled like paper. Ships broke apart, spilling atmosphere and crew into the void. Return fire, Drakthos ordered. Destroy those humans! The Crothian fleet began shooting. Energy beams lanced out toward the human ships. Some found their targets. Human shields flared and failed. 2 ships took critical damage and began to drift, but the humans didn't fight alone. From behind the moon, the Velrathi fleet emerged. 200 ships moving with incredible speed and agility. They dove into the chaos, their weapons focusing on damaged Crothian vessels, finishing what the asteroids had started. Pilot Sun Wu-an led a squadron of human bombers into the maelstrom. His fighter was tiny compared to the massive capital ships, but it was fast and armed with precision weapons. Gold Squadron, he called over the comm. Target their command ships. Take out their ability to coordinate. The fighters wove through the battle, dodging debris and weapons fire. Sun Wu locked onto a Crothian command carrier. It was trying to organize a defensive formation, bringing ships together to concentrate their firepower. Fox 3, Sun Wu called, launching his missiles. They streaked across space and slammed into the carrier's bridge section. The ship began to list, its commands becoming confused and contradictory. All across the battlefield, the same scene repeated. Human and Velrathi forces worked together with practiced precision. They had trained for this, planned for it, sacrificed for it. The Crothians were brave and fierce, but they were fighting a battle designed specifically to counter their strengths. Their numbers meant nothing in the confined space of the belt. Their heavy weapons couldn't track the fast-moving Velrathi ships. Their shields couldn't stop the asteroids. Captain Youngman commanded the Indomitable from the heart of the fleet. His dreadnought absorbed hits that would have destroyed smaller ships. Its massive cannons fired methodically, each shot destroying or crippling a Crothian vessel. "Captain," his weapons officer called out, "we're running low on ammunition. Main guns at 40% capacity. Switch to secondary weapons," Youngman ordered. "And keep those shields strong. We need to hold the line." Drakthos watched his fleet die. Half his ships were gone or disabled. The humans in Velrathi pressed the attack from all sides. His mighty war fleet was being torn apart. "Retreat," he finally screamed. "All ships withdraw." But the human fleet had positioned themselves to block the escape routes. Ships that tried to flee ran into walls of weapons fire. The Velrathi harried their flanks, preventing them from organizing. In desperation, Drakthos made a final decision. If he could not conquer the Velrathi homeworld, he would destroy it. He turned his damaged flagship toward the planet and engaged maximum thrust. "All power to engines," he ordered. "We will ram their world. We will make them pay for this humiliation." His massive ship accelerated, pushing past the human vessels, ignoring the weapons fire that tore at its hull. The planet grew larger. If he could just reach it, his ship's reactor would explode on impact with enough force to devastate the surface. Admiral Heejin saw what was happening. "Youngman," she shouted over the command channel. "Stop him. Don't let that ship reach the planet." Captain Youngman didn't hesitate. He turned the Indomitable directly into the path of the Crothian flagship. His crew scrambled to reinforce the forward shields. The ship's frame groaned under the acceleration. The 2 massive vessels collided in a shower of sparks and torn metal. The Indomitable's shields held for a moment, then began to fail. Hull plates buckled. Internal compartments vented to space, but Youngman's ship held firm. It caught the Crothian flagship and began pushing it off course, away from the planet, away from the millions of Velrathi civilians below. "All weapons fire," Youngman ordered. At point-blank range, the Indomitable unleashed everything it had. Missiles, cannons, lasers. The Crothian flagship's hull couldn't withstand the assault. It began to break apart piece by piece. The Velrathi fleet converged on the dying ship. Every vessel added its weapons to the barrage. The combined firepower was overwhelming. Drakthos saw his ship dying around him. His bridge was on fire. His crew was dead or dying. He had lost. Lost completely. The Crothian flagship exploded in a brilliant flash of light. The shockwave rocked nearby ships, but the planet below remained safe. The remaining Crothian vessels, seeing their leader dead and their fleet destroyed, finally broke and ran. Of 800 ships, only 23 managed to escape the system. The rest were debris, floating among the asteroids they had foolishly entered. The battle was over. The Indomitable drifted, its engines offline, its hull torn open in dozens of places. But its crew was alive. Captain Youngman sat in his command chair, breathing hard, watching the rescue ships approach. On the surface of the Velrathi homeworld, Millions of civilians felt the tremors from the orbital impacts. Debris rained down, burning up in the atmosphere. The ground shook as pieces of destroyed ships fell into the oceans. When planets shake, people remember why. The hospital ship moved slowly through the debris field, collecting survivors and bringing medical aid to damaged vessels. Admiral Hyejin Song sat in a recovery bed, her left arm in a cast, bandages wrapped around her ribs. The final moments of the battle had been violent. A piece of shrapnel had torn through her flagship's bridge. She had been lucky. Captain Youngmin Han sat 2 beds away. His injuries were more severe. Burns covered his hands and face from the fire that had swept through the Indomitable's bridge. But he was alive. His ship had held together long enough to save the planet below. "They're calling you a hero," Hyejin said, her voice rough with pain medication. Youngmin shook his head carefully. "I was just doing my job. Protecting those who can't protect themselves. That's what heroes do," she replied. Outside the medical bay, the cleanup continued. Human and Velrathi ships worked together to clear the dangerous debris. Bodies were recovered and prepared for burial. Ships were salvaged where possible. The asteroid belt would never look the same again. The news of the battle spread across the galaxy at the speed of light. Humanity had defeated the Crothian Empire's largest fleet. Not for conquest. Not for resources. For a debt that was over a century old. In the Galactic Council chambers, representatives from dozens of species watched the recordings in stunned silence. The tactical display showed how the humans had turned simple rocks into devastating weapons, how they had fought with precision and coordination, how they had sacrificed their own ships to protect the Velrathi homeworld. "They mobilized 400 warships," one council member whispered. "Their entire fleet for what? For a favor from over 100 years ago?" "They remember," another said quietly. "That's what the humans do. They remember everything." Within days, 16 species sent diplomatic delegations to Earth. Ships arrived carrying gifts, trade agreements, and requests for audiences. Each one carried the same underlying message. "We want to be your friends. We want to be written in gold in the ledger." 3 species sent quieter messages, private communications directly to the human government. "We helped your colony ships in the early days. Do you remember?" The human response was immediate and warm. "Yes, we remember. How can we help you?" One species, the Helax, had provided fuel and navigation data to a lost human exploration ship 30 years ago. They were now facing a famine due to crop failures. Within a week, human cargo ships arrived with food supplies, enough to feed their population for a year, free of charge. "This is far more than we gave you," the Helax ambassador said, overwhelmed. "You helped us when we needed it," the human representative replied. "Now we help you." That's how this works. The second species, the Tivon, had rescued human miners from a collapsing asteroid facility 40 years ago. They were now struggling with a disease outbreak. Human medical ships arrived with doctors, equipment, and experimental treatments. They worked around the clock until the outbreak was contained. The third species, the Yuan, had shared defensive technology with humanity during a pirate crisis 50 years ago. They now faced territorial disputes with an aggressive neighbor. Human diplomats arrived to mediate. When diplomacy failed, human ships arrived to patrol the borders. The aggressor quickly backed down. The message was clear. Help humanity, and humanity would move mountains to help you in return. But there was another side to the ledger. The part written in red. The Crothian Empire received a formal message from humanity. It was simple and direct. "You threatened our friends. You killed our soldiers. You have been marked in red. We do not forget." The Crothians tried to send ambassadors to negotiate. Humanity refused to see them. They tried to offer trade agreements. Humanity rejected them all. For the next decade, no human would do business with the Crothians. No human ship would enter their space. They were isolated, marked as enemies. Other species watched and learned. The humans were not just loyal to their friends. They were relentless toward their enemies. On the Velrathi homeworld, massive reconstruction efforts began. Human engineers worked alongside Velrathi builders to repair the damage from falling debris. The craters from the impacts were slowly filled. The burned forests were replanted. Ambassador Minho Quan met with the Velrathi High Council to discuss the future. The Velrathi wanted to offer humanity anything: territory, resources, technology. They felt the weight of the debt they now owed. "We cannot accept payment," Minho said firmly. That's not why we came. Then what do you want? A council member asked, frustrated. You saved our entire species. There must be something. Minho thought for a moment. A treaty, a mutual defense pact, an agreement that if either of us is threatened, the other will respond. That's all we ask. That is not equal, the council member protested. You gave us everything. We give you only promises. Promises are what matter most, Minho said. Your promises led Hive leader Tixvara to save our ancestors. Our promises brought us here to save you. Promises between species. Kept across generations, that's what builds a better galaxy. The treaty was signed within a week, the first formal alliance between humanity and another species. It would not be the last. Tixvara, now incredibly old and frail, asked to meet with Admiral Hejin one final time. The meeting took place in a garden on the Velrathi homeworld. Trees swayed in the gentle breeze. Water fountains played peaceful music. Tixvara moved slowly, supported by younger Velrathi. They settled onto a resting platform, their compound eyes reflecting the sunlight. I am dying, Tixvara said simply, old age finally catching up with me. But I wanted to see you before I go. Hejin sat across from them, her arm still in its cast. It's an honor, Hive leader. Tell me truly, Tixvara said. Why did you risk so much? Why bring your entire fleet? You could have sent a token force. A small gesture. Instead, you risked everything. Hejin looked out at the garden. It was beautiful, peaceful, worth saving. Because you gave us a gift you didn't understand, she said. When you saved those people on Namsan's Hope, you weren't just saving lives. You were teaching us something. You showed us that kindness matters, that helping others has value beyond profit or politics. She turned back to Tixvara. Everything we became as a species started with that moment. You showed us mercy when we were weak, and we built our entire civilization on that foundation. We became the kind of species that remembers favors, that keeps promises, that helps others the way you helped us. Tixvara was quiet for a long time. I did not know, they finally said. I thought we were just helping some strangers. I did not know it would lead to all of this. Small acts of kindness often do, Hejin said. They ripple outward in ways we can never predict. Tixvara's mandibles moved in their version of a smile. Then I am glad we found your ship that day. I am glad I made the choice to help. And I am glad to see what your species has become. 3 days later, Tixvara passed away peacefully. The entire Velrathi homeworld mourned, and so did humanity. On Earth, a special ceremony was held at the Ledger. Millions gathered to watch as a new inscription was added, not in gold or red, but in platinum, a color that had never been used before. Hive leader Tixvara, the one who started it all, the one who showed us that mercy matters, the one who saved us and, in doing so, shaped who we would become. Gone but never forgotten. The Velrathi erected their own monument on their homeworld, a massive statue showing humans and Velrathi standing together. The inscription read, Humanity, the species that remembers. Back on Earth, old Junho Lee watched the ceremonies from his home. He was 98 now, one of the last survivors from Namsan's Hope. He had been the young communications officer who first detected the Velrathi ships. He sat in his chair, tears running down his weathered face, and whispered, We kept our promise. We remembered. The galaxy had changed. Species that had once ignored humanity now sought their friendship. Those who had considered humans weak prey now gave them a wide berth. The Ledger became famous across civilized space. Every species knew the rules. Help humanity and they would never let you fall. They would cross the galaxy, mobilize their fleets, sacrifice their own people to save yours. They would remember your kindness forever, harm humanity, and they would never forgive. They would mark you in red, isolate you, and if necessary, shake planets to ensure justice. 3 more names were added to the Ledger in gold that year. The Helax, the Tyvon, and the Yuan. Species that had helped humanity in small ways decades ago. Species that humanity now helped in return. And at the very top, in the largest inscription, the Velrathi name remained. The first, the most important. The ones who had shown humanity what it meant to be good. Admiral Hejin stood in front of the Ledger one last time before she retired. Her arm had healed. The scars remained, but they didn't hurt anymore. She traced her fingers over her grandmother's name, listed among the survivors of Namsan's Hope. Then she looked up at Tixvara's name in platinum. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. Behind her, the hall filled with visitors. children on school trips, diplomats from other species, citizens coming to remember. They all stopped and stared at the golden names, at the red ones, at the platinum inscription at the top. The ledger stood as a promise, a warning, a testament to what humanity valued above all else: memory, loyalty, justice. Humanity remembered every favor, and their retribution could shake planets.